Welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at PTV WORLD. In today's show, we will be discussing a very important topic and also taking a look at what is going on within Pakistan and, of course, in terms of its regional peace and security. We're going to be taking a look at, of course, what has happened on the 9th of March in the evening, as DG ISPR had also clarified with regards to an Indian flying object, a supersonic flying object that entered into Pakistani airspace, and it fell near Mia Channu. This flying object was detected by the Pakistan Air Force, and it has come to Pakistan's notice that this is, of course, another violation of Pakistani airspace. Fortunately, there is, of course, no damage to human life, but it did put a lot of international and national flights at risk, and it did put human lives on ground at risk as well. We also understand that there have been statements coming in from the foreign minister as well, condemning this incident, of course, and also talking about how this is a repeat of violations in the past as well, and that perhaps this was aggressive and not a technical failure. And he said that investigation needs to be made behind the real motives of such an incident. We also know that statements have come in from the Indian side as well, clarifying that this was due to a technical malfunction as part of a routine exercise, and it was also something that it regrets. We're going to explore in further detail what really is the case here at the moment and what sort of future course needs to be taken, because of course it is an irresponsible action that has been seen, and it did put a lot of damage to civilian property, and of course putting a lot of lives at risk as well. What sort of consequences there need to be for this, and how do we proceed further? We'll explore that in further detail. At the end of the show, we'll also be quickly taking a look at the important announcement that has been made with regards to overseas Pakistanis. A 3-day convention is going to be held for overseas Pakistanis from the 13th to the 15th of March, and this is going to be a historic event. We're going to see what exactly is the event going to entail, what sort of activities are going to be involved, and who all are going to participate. We know that a number of overseas Pakistanis from over 25 countries have already come into Islamabad for this convention, and of course the PTI government has always enjoyed their support. So we're going to take a look at that briefly at the end of the show as well, in terms of what all this convention is going to be about. Let me welcome in the show, in our studios, we have with us Mr. Masood Akhtar, who is a Marshal retired senior analyst. He has an expert opinion also on air security, and we're going to be talking to him in further detail regarding our first segment. Of course, in our studios, we also have Raja Faisal with us. We're going to be joined online by Brigadier retired Haris Nawaz, who's joined us online. He's a political analyst. And we're also joined by Mr. Shalinder Singh, who is a veteran of the International Army, regular on our show. He's also an international security analyst. Thank you very much, everyone, for being with us in the debate. I'll start with you, Mr. Masood. When we talk about, of course, the incident that has happened on the 9th of March, there is still a lot that needs to be investigated and needs to be found out. But with regards to what exactly happened, since we know there was a high-speed flying object that did enter into Pakistani airspace and put a lot of international flights and national flights at risk, and of course aviation security in general as well, what sort of an implications does this even have for us to understand in terms of any such object to maneuver from its course and then, of course, violate Pakistani or any airspace for that matter? Can you help us understand the kind of implications it has?
I think it's, first of all, thank you. Very embarrassing and very unfortunate. Indians have not had a history of such failures, but we must remember that such like machines have scores of systems within this: hydraulics, electronics, oil, and so on and so forth. And if a single component malfunctions or a nozzle flap goes haywire, the missile could actually take off into all kinds of directions. So seemingly this went ballistic at some stage. The thing happened yesterday, and they should have owned it up straight away. It is only after the pressure by the DG ISPR that they came up with the explanation today. I'm told, I did not know, but before I came to this program, I was told that they have owned it up and they've said sorry. Good, but not good enough, because it has serious implications. Yesterday, we were told that there were at least 3, 4, 5 flights in the area, in the vicinity, and anything could have happened. I have done some work when I was in service, and I will tell you of a similar embarrassing incident. 97, 98, they were doing an exercise, Indian Air Force was doing an exercise in Bhuj. And they would every time accuse us every day of spurious targets that they would paint on their radars and call our High Commissioner and protest and do all sorts of things. There was a monitor there was a radio call that we monitored on the same day. Two MiG-21s, they scrambled, they took off, they went in afterburners to high altitude, and around 30,000 feet the leader fired a missile, and as he closed and he made visual contact with this, he said, "Oh, this is a jumbo." And as he closed in further, he said, "It is Qantas." So remember that these people almost shot a Qantas out of the sky at that time. We also gave it in the press at that time, at that very moment. So they've embarrassed themselves. I think the implications are grave. Had we taken action on this, but the nation must understand, the Air Force and the Army, if the tactical and the operational situation does not demand, we are not in constant standby situation. For example, in case of Kill or Kahuta, we had political direction that no sparrow should come into this area. So we made sure through balloons and constant combat air patrols that nobody comes into this area. But Indians have had a history of such failures and such like events. For example, they flew a MiG-25 at 40, 50,000 feet, somewhere same time, 97, 98. Of course, this was also in our airspace for about 5 minutes. And we did not have an aeroplane that could go up to 50,000 feet except the F-16. Implications are grave. This can actually spin out of hand, and Indians better be very careful with this. Whatever indigenous technology, BrahMos, according to them, it's a showstopper. It can have failure. So in case you poop one off out of Sirsa and send it southwards, and if it breaks right and goes ballistic, this is exactly what will happen. I think the international opinion, the powers that be should take note of this, and this could have implications graver than what the Indian hegemonic, the regime over there, Hindutva dominated, is wanting to do, and wants to actually rule this part of the world and become a regional and a world power. It must become more responsible than what it has been. What happened yesterday was silly, unfortunate, tragic, and the fact that they owned up after 48, 72 hours, I think they should feel very sorry, if not ashamed.
Very true.
All right, let me also talk to Brigadier Haris about this. And as Mr. Masood quite explicitly pointed out, what really is the scenario with regards to such incidents in the past, as well as the kind of responsibility that needs to be shown. I want to make something clear before we proceed to the rest of this discussion in the show. Does this mean that this, of course, was a technical failure or a technical malfunction and did not have any aggressive designs or any ulterior motives? Are we moving on with that case?
You see, Sana, the point is, I think Air Marshal is absolutely right. There's so many other things. If it was malfunction or it inadvertently fired, it went out of control, then the moral obligation of Indian side was that they should have immediately, and they should have SOS signal or call to RDG of military operations. They are in hotline communication and inform that this is what has happened. We are monitoring. It is still in our space. But after some time, we apprehend it might go to your airspace violations. Please take account and see. We don't mind if you destroy whatever you do it, but we would definitely feel regret and do immediate action, because that was a time when there was a lot of passenger traffic was going in air in Indian side and then on Pakistan side. It could have been a disaster if it hit any passenger aircraft. Number one. And this is not the first time. Many times, actually, Indian technology is obsolete, and there are a lot of malfunctions. You know, many times they try to launch a missile rocket, and then it immediately backfires and falls over there right in front of the audience. That has happened many times. Then their command and control system and its security is very weak. You have seen how many times an uranium has been caught in India. They were selling to the different people in Nepal, in the basement of a car park. They were selling it. So there are a lot of these leaks which keep happening. And International Atomic Energy Commission, they don't take any action because we understand what the reasons. And the reasons are they have soft corner for Indians because they are in Quad, they want to use it against China, Pakistan, CPEC. There are so many things. So I think in that context, it was a very serious thing. But one thing they might be wanted to see also, maybe they want to see how Pakistan is very careful. Their monitoring system, their surveillance system is how much efficient. That could be the thing. But since they say regret, it is very late. They should have done immediately. If they had informed a DG Minute operation, then we would have said yes. So I think once it landed, and it landed in a very
All right,
unimportant
all
place.
right. Before I move on to Mr. Shalinder Singh, let us also go ahead and see what exactly the DGISPR spoke about in the aftermath of this incident.
On 9th of March 2022, at 18:43 hours, that is 6:43 p.m., a high-speed flying object was picked up inside Indian territory by Air Defense Operations Center of Pakistan Air Force. From its initial course, the object suddenly maneuvered towards Pakistani territory and violated Pakistan's airspace, ultimately falling near Mia Channu at 1850 hours, that is 6:50 p.m. And when it fell, it also damaged some civilian property. Thankfully, no loss or injury to human life was caused. Pakistan Air Force continuously monitored the complete flight path of the flying object from its point of origin near Sirsa in India till its point of impact near Mia Channu. And Pakistan Air Force initiated requisite tactical actions in accordance with the SOPs. It is important to highlight that flight path of this object endangered many international and domestic passenger flights both in Indian and Pakistani airspace, as well as human life and property on ground. Whatever caused this incident to happen, it is for the Indians to explain. It nevertheless shows their disregard for aviation safety and reflects very poorly on their technological prowess and procedural efficiency. The incident could have resulted in a major aviation disaster as well as civilian casualties on ground. Pakistan strongly protests this flagrant violation and cautions against recurrence of.
And this is, of course, what the DGISPR has spoken about and what we're discussing at length over here as well. Mr. Shalinder Singh, when we look at what has happened, and then, of course, the kind of response that we've gotten from the Indian side as well, we want to be able to understand further what really is going on. If, of course, these are technical malfunctions, as is being said, then why aren't they really being looked after? Why has this happened in the past as well? It continues to happen. Is there someone who's actually looking into these issues? And then when we talk about the responsibility of such actions as well. Why did the accountability came so late? Why wasn't this something that, if it did actually happen or malfunction, stood out and actually been informed?
At the outset, I can only tell you one thing. All that ends well is the best situation for anybody and everybody. Smiles abroad, because people can take it lightly, but this is a very serious matter. And I was expecting that two senior officers of the Pakistan Army would talk very strategically correct, and they will not bring in Hindutva into such a thing. Well, it has got no connection. Object which was fired, it has got into some technical problem. Air Marshal brought it out so well that it can happen. But it doesn't mean that probably Indian technological advancement is at stake. No, it doesn't. yes, I will tend to agree with anybody and everybody that this is the price one has to pay for the technological advancement, that things can go wrong. We should be very, very careful. Yes, I will fully agree. If any kind of airspace of any other country is violated, it is wrong. There's no denying that fact. And very rightly so, the Indians have accepted that, regretted that. Now, what else is required, I don't know. But I fail to find that we have to get into an India bashing or Pakistan bashing into that. No, I don't think. Let us evaluate this technically correct. Something was under test, it went wrong, Indians have accepted it. You were otherwise also you tell me one thing. Will Pakistan ever tolerate that something comes into their air and they will not reciprocate? They would have also found out, which you two senior officers are not going to accept. I can understand your handicap on that, but I'm very sure your technical people would have actually assessed it correct that yes, things have gone wrong. It has come on wrong side. It should have not. And that ends the story because the Indians are also accepting that. We are not denying that. Now, coming to the point that if it had any ulterior motive or so, please do investigate. Why not? You have a right to investigate. That if, because you see, it is not in our character and gene that we will start attacking you or we will start deliberately violating your airspace so that there is a repercussion of you reciprocating. I think that is not what India is up to. And quoting any example of 90s, this is not 90s. We both countries are much more grown up, mature, and understanding today. We don't reciprocate to each other's, some mistake or anything so violently and so outrightly the way we used to do it earlier. There is a lot of maturity which has come in Pakistan and India. Otherwise, you tell me one thing. We could have been selective that what we are evacuating from Ukraine will exclude Pakistanis. No, it doesn't happen like that. Those are humanitarian gestures. Bangladesh Prime Minister has thanked the Indians for that. Maybe Pakistan didn't think it right to do that. No problems. Because we would have not done it, that somebody is going to thank. But we are talking about a maturity level, a responsibility level at which both the countries are. And let us appreciate, you also didn't react.
Displayed, and it is being displayed from the Pakistan side, sir. But I just wanted to highlight, sir, if you can allow me, sir, I just wanted to highlight that in today's CCS, according to my journalistic sources, they tell me that Narendra Modi wasn't part of it. So can you hear me, sir?
Sir, my only request to you is that please see through that. I'm appreciating that yes, your country is being very, very responsible. Good. This is the best thing that can happen. This is a confidence building measure that you understand, we understand. Yes.
Be displayed from the Indian side as well. The apology should have been extended by Prime Minister being head of the state, sir. It should have been extended by him. But right now, as my sources tell me, as my sources tell me that in today's CCS meeting, he was not present because he was embarrassed. They tell me that he didn't want to be part of it because he was embarrassed. Rather, he was attending his political rallies in Gujarat, sir.
You are getting into a debate, whereas I am getting into a
state, sir,
which is good for both the countries. That should be our aim. That should be our motive. That should be our responsibility. That when we both sit, the panelists, let us talk something good. Let us talk something more sensible.
I'll go towards.
Yeah. So, sir, we can keep, then to start discussing Hindu, Muslim and other things.
Mr. Shalinder Singh, and that is of course the aim of the debate. And as Faisal was pointing out to you earlier as well, this is something that we actually look into as well. And of course, you've always been a respected guest in our show as well. But this is something that you understand that we are talking about accountability, and accountability on both sides, of course. Yes, Faisal?
Yeah, Sana, I wanted to go towards Air Marshal Masood. Sir, I wanted to first of all, you can of course reply whatever the things he was highlighting about you. Number one, number two, I wanted to ask you in today's CCS meeting, which was a top level meeting, Modi did not appear in there. Modi simply said that he would not be part of it because he was embarrassed on whatever DRDO did. And Raksha Mantral, of course, Rajnath Singh, he was of the point that if somebody who should be responsible for it, that should be DRDO, and only they should be, tackling with it. Is it the right way to go along between two nuclear states, sir? Sir, Sir Masood, it was a question to you, sir.
Okay, okay. Colonel Singh, I entirely agree with you. Let us give up India-Pakistan bashing. I would also tend to agree, let's not bring it Hindutva, but please understand. Please tell your government, when Pakistani targets were attacked on 26th February 2019, wrong. Please tell them. Whenever you employ air power and it goes across by 10 kilometers, it can actually spin totally out of control. And please understand that when we responded on 27th, we actually could have done much more damage. Our response, number one, was fully calibrated, graduated, and proportional. There were pilots that I retired sometimes in 2006, 2007, pilots who had locked up more targets with their aeroplanes. The Chief of Air Staff and the Air Staff took a deliberate decision not to permit to press the trigger for more, because had we damaged more, it could have actually spun totally out of control. And then we also, and the Indian, somehow at least one channel that we go to, which always starts a war on television itself, they actually poo-pooed that our pilots could not take out the targets, and we proved it on television that there was this H4 weapon which actually was smack onto the target, and at the last moment was taken away by, let's say, 2, 3, 4, 5 kilometers. So India must be responsible. Number one, they should have straight away spoken with our people. The DGMO has a hotline. They could have given a statement straight away, but the fact that they kept it not hidden, but they were probably, I agree with Raja Faisal, that probably they were so thoroughly embarrassed. There is nothing to be embarrassed in this, and I entirely agree with Colonel Singh. Things can go wrong with technology, and more so when we have a Mark III kind of a missile. But please understand, when we launch a missile out of Sirsa, which is close to the border, and it turns right and goes 90 degrees ballistic, and there are just 3 minutes, God forbid, had there been somebody trigger happy and launched off a tactical weapon from here, which may be unarmed or so on and so forth, things could go out of control. So number one, we should not bring in air power at this time in any future scenario. When the armies clash, they clash on the FIBA, forward edge of the battle area. So wars do not escalate like this. But when you bring in air power,
right, and I want to also come back to. Yes, Mr. Masood Akhtar, I want to also talk to Mr. Shalinder Singh in response to that. And Mr. Shalinder, you can add to that, but also kindly, when we were talking about earlier in terms of what really needs to be done for our conversation to move forward, it is also important for the countries to realize that when we talk, we'll have to be able to accept responsibilities, be more accountable, accept the kind of actions that have been taken, and be honest about it. Does India have that sort of a resolve? Is it willing to be able to take its accountability or accept things if they go wrong moving forward as well, in terms of what has happened in the past or any sort of violations that they take place, and have real conversations and accept things as they are? Is that resolve even there? Because if that's not, then we can't really have the conversation that you were earlier pointing out.
Correct. Good. Very good. Very good. I'll answer yours first. India does have that resolve. Otherwise, India would have never regretted this incident, firstly. Now, coming to the point, what Honorable Air Marshal was bringing out. Luckily, sir, I also retired in 2007, and I am generally aware about what went where and how. I can only request you, sir, what happened on that day should not be compared with today or what happened now. These two are uncomparable. Those were very deliberate actions, and here is an accidental malfunction. We must, keep that very, very separately. We can definitely have a discussion on what happened during 2019, what led and what did not lead, the technicalities are well known to you as well as me. But I'm not into that kind of discussion because the way I'm saying, I'm just now going by your word, the way Air Force of Pakistan was so responsible that they didn't do the damage, so did the Indian Army also, or the Indian Air Force did not do any other damage than what was targeted for. Otherwise, you also know it. You could have done much more, we could have done much more. But the aim was not that. And again, the beauty of the maturity which has come into both the countries, that we did not escalate it. It could have been escalated the moment any aircraft crosses into others' airspace is a declaration of war. One can treat it like that. But we both didn't treat it. We both stopped short of it. We did whatever to cool down and not let it escalate. Now, coming to the point was, Sana was bringing out the talks. We are not talking with Pakistan, and that is not very, very right also. But we are not talking on something for which we are convinced. 70 years we have been trying to talk, and talk. But the terrorism related issue still has continued. Now, here is a government which said, okay, let us only talk when we see that terrorism related response from Pakistan is so positive, overwhelming, that we sit down gladly to do that. Again, it's not a matter to smile because I've been, insisting on this. This is a very strategic talk. Lot of seriousness need to be there. If we laugh away something, we smile away something, it will bring down the importance of the participants' involvement in the topic. That is how I feel. So Harris sir is a very beautiful friend otherwise to me. For that I can smile. But when it comes down to discussing something which is so serious, which can lead to anything between India and Pakistan, I think we need to be much more, we are already rightly quite mature on it, but let us graduate to more things and make sure that we create an environment where we can talk the way you and me are talking. Let both the DGMO talk, let both the governments talk, or the Ministry of External Affairs talk. Now, coming to that one point that India should have informed you immediately. Yes, why not? It should have. It should have informed you earliest possible. As you, Air Marshal sir, very rightly brought it out, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, it takes time for things to come up. At the same time, I am now doing a confidence building, measure. The DGMO of Pakistan could have also picked up that phone and said, "Yaar, ye kya kiya tumne? What was this?" I'm not trying to say it's a blame game. I'm talking about the positivity. If the Indian counterpart didn't do it, it would have been done by the DGMO.
Right, and Mr. Shalinder Singh, I'm sure you must be aware that this is something that Pakistan has always talked about. We've always extended our hand in terms of dialogue.
Sana, if you allow me, I just wanted to go towards Brigadier Harris with a comment. Obviously, I want to start with a comment. Shouldn't it be responsibility of DRDO to contact their own officers on the top and then their own Prime Minister that this is what has happened and tell us what to do right now? This is what you call responsibility, sir. Number two, sir, I just wanted to ask Brigadier Harris about right now when Modi should have been, calling the shots in India, because it is not a matter of just a missile to any other itsy-bitsy country. This was a missile going towards a country where you have a constant standoff going on. Why wasn't it addressed? Rather, he was attending his own political rallies. Should it be the right way to go along the things, sir? I just wanted to ask you, Brigadier Harris.
You see, the point is this could have been much better confidence building measure the way Colonel Shalinder is talking. And at least the foreign officer, the foreign minister could have responded and talked to our foreign minister that this is what we feel regret. Or immediately DGMO, same after 1 hour or half an hour, could have talked and felt sorry that to DGMO that this is what has happened. But the point is we need to have a positive attitude. and the positive thoughts. That is lacking, and particularly what Pakistan is more concerned about is because we are a victim of terrorism. We are facing a lot of terrorism. And then, of course, we know what is happening around. And that is our big concern we always show. And then when Indians say that Pakistan should go a positive response to terrorism, that's what I feel uncomfortable and laugh because we are a victim of terrorism. We don't, you have all the time international border, you have all the fencing. Day, night is just a day because of your generator lights are on. You can pinpoint even a coin from the other side of the border. And then Pakistan it cannot afford now. We are already embroiled in so many problems in Pakistan, domestic, international, and with our neighbors. So we want peace. We will never go for any escalated things the way you have gone to it 2019 February. Even then, our response was very mired, and this is what I expect from Indians. This could have again escalated the situation had Indian immediately responded, talked to concerned authorities in Pakistan, and things could have been very easily de-escalated. And of course, there was a peace and tranquility again in the neighboring countries.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that somebody was running, a defensive offense
Right. My
from
next
India.
question would be to Mr. Masood, and I wanted to ask with regards to that. Faisal, don't worry, you will have ample time to ask your questions. Don't worry, I'll give you time to ask them as well. Let me just come to Mr. Masood and talk to him about, with reference to what has happened. We understand that India has talked about its investigation and also said it's going to probe into what really has happened. How far do you think that sort of an investigation is going to be conclusive? And even then, when we understand that, of course, it's a violation of airspace, and you outlined earlier as well that as a responsible and tactful state, we're going to be choosing from our options in terms of how to react to such incidents. But how much can we actually go forward in terms of giving more margin or being more tactful? And then what sort of options do we have in terms of consequences or legal actions that can be taken for any such future violations?
I won't really comment on the legal action that we can take, but I think we should take a leaf from the time when we set up the hotline between the two DGMOs and improve that. And but the attitudes have to change, and I think Brigadier Harris brought out a very good point. Look, we have bent over backwards to accommodate the Indian viewpoint when on Kashmir we said, okay, from multilateralism we are coming to bilateralism, and this is in writing. This Colonel Singh must remember that. We agreed to that. And then in comes the Modi government, and of course you people have had, why this incident actually bites us is because after having done 370, after having taken away 35A, after having come up with the Citizenship Amendment Act, now when things happen, can you imagine the kind of pressure that DGISPR's pressure and later on the government of Pakistan and the Pakistan Army and the Pakistan Air Force has been for the last 72 hours? The Twitter is full of criticism as to why on earth was this not shot down? Why on earth tactical action was not taken? I would just like to mention, being a combat aviator, what we do is whenever there is a target that approaches the border, in case they are flying parallel, let's say 10 nautical miles or 20 nautical miles on that side, it doesn't bother us. But the moment somebody turns inwards 90 degrees to the border, 10 nautical miles, we put our pilots in the cockpit, and I'm sure the Indian Air Force must be doing the same. The moment they cross, we scramble our aeroplanes. And in case a thing like this happened, God forbid, had it not crashed where it crashed and had it carried on, probably we would have been forced to take tactical action and respond in kind. So number one, we should improve the DGMO hotline and encourage them. Number two, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, instead of browbeating, and this I'm not doing Hindutva bashing or India bashing, we should not browbeat each other. We are independent, sovereign nations. We should respect one another. And I think General Narwane said something very right, and we should take a leaf out. He said, any future Indo-Pak conflicts will be no more than T20s. There are not going to be any more test matches. That means 48 hours plus minus. And in that, Indians must understand, if they, let's say Kashmir is localized through a false flag operation or whatever the case be like Pulwama or whatever the case be, the airspace is limited, the ground space is limited. They take in 2 corps, we take in 2 corps. They bring in 5 squadrons, we bring in 5 squadrons. So it is an even match. We must respect one another. The attitude should not be to browbeat one another, but the attitude should be to accommodate all these dichotomies that are going to come up every now and then. And please, I think all these trials, in case this BrahMos or whatever missile it was, has caused so much of agony, both sides, more on our side, because the Prime Minister, the Army Chief and the Air Chief, everybody was under pressure to answer as to what the hell has gone wrong. People must respect one another, take these weapons farther away from the border and make sure that nothing goes wrong, and if at all something goes wrong, immediately inform the other side that, look, this is what has happened, and if not, say sorry.
Yeah, Colonel Shailendra, I just wanted to ask you, sir, don't you think that today's Indian government, it lacks political and diplomatic wisdom to, when they are posed with this kind of situation, they should have been more responsible, but they lack the wisdom when it comes to diplomacy, when it comes to, talking to Pakistan. They are shying away for whatsoever reason, maybe a political reason or whatever, but they are doing so. And right now, of course, we know that in India, there's election season as well. So it might be owing to the fact that there is election. That's why Modi is shying away from being and portraying and assessing the situation and, portraying as someone who is in charge in there.
Raja Faisal, if you can allow me, I would like to only bring it to the attention of the Air Marshal. Sir, Pakistan never backbended itself on JNK. Never. Why should it be treated like that? It was a strategically considered, peaceful decision for you to decide what Pakistan or what is good for Pakistan, what is good for good neighborly relations with India. So any decisions taken which are favorable should be appreciated. Don't take it bending backwards. This is my submission to you. Now coming to what Raja Faisal is doing. Raja Faisal can try definitely anything and everything, but I'll not get into this trap of Pakistan bashing because I have never done that. I have never ever done that. It is on record. Raja Faisal knows about it very well. Coming to the wisdom and not wisdom, I think the whole world, and I'm sure you also have been watching all this, that where does India stand in terms of diplomacy, considered decision, economic growth, everything. So it will be very wrong. It will be very wrong for you to comment that probably there was lack of wisdom. No, it doesn't happen like that. Odd incidents once doesn't mean that there is lack of wisdom. If today I have to, say, I think India and Pakistan say they belong to same in the world. We have the most intelligent people around. There are the countries are respecting us for what? Other countries, those developed countries. Why NASA is asking for scientists from India, oblique Pakistan? Why? Because it's a well-known fact in the world that from our continent, from our erstwhile so-called Hindustan, from where we both come, I think people are basically very intelligent. We are very tolerant, and we take always considered decision full of wisdom. Let's not get into this, again bashing that there is a lack of wisdom. क्या कमी है आपके और मेरे
All
देश
right,
में?
Mr. Shailendra Singh, and I totally believe in the power of the people and the good of the people, of course, in India as well and elsewhere in the world as well. And that, of course, is where the hope really lies. But of course, for that, we really also need to understand that people at the state level are also showing that sort of power and courage and even wisdom, as Faisal was pointing out, in terms of actually taking responsible actions and then having the real conversations that we're already having. Mr. Brigadier Harris, when we talk about these issues both coming in from within India and then, of course, at the state level. Do you think that there are options for peace or dialogue in terms of the way that things are going on both within India and in terms of its foreign policy? Of course, there are a lot of issues that continue to exist, but there are prerequisites and conditions that need to be met before we can even talk about dialogue.
Sana, Pakistan is always more towards peace and tranquility. And if you remember, when Abhinandan was arrested, when he fell from the aircraft, and we immediately returned Indian because it was a message of peace. But then the problem is our peace is taken as our weakness. Then, of course, you have to create a conducive environment. The point is, Pakistan is always ready. We always say India in the condition, Pakistan side should stop terrorism, give positive vibes, and then we're going to sit around it. But now the things have changed. You see, unilaterally, when you revoke 370 and then you revoke 35A, and then you go and occupy your territory, which remains a disputed area. So Pakistan has said that we are ready to talk, we are always willing to talk, and we want a best of relationship with India. But the problem is then you have to resolve the main core issue. And for that, either you again revert to 370 and 35A, and we are ready to talk it out. Pakistan Prime Minister many times so told, even a national security advisor said many times that we are ready to, but these are the preconditions. Because it was a bilateral issue, even you say, that bilateral issue has to be resolved bilaterally. You can't do it you unilaterally, you take action, you have gone to 1948, you went to United Nations, then for the revolution, plebiscite, you accepted, your country went there, and now suddenly one day...
Absolutely. You're right, Brigadier Haris Nawaz. Thank you for joining us. I would also like to extend gratitude to Mr. Masood Akhtar and Mr. Shalinder Singh for joining us in the debate. And unfortunately, we're almost out of time. But thank you so much for coming in and being part of the conversation. We're going to move on for our second segment as well, and we will be having another guest online with us. But before that, Faisal, when we look at the entire scenario, and of course, the relationship between Pakistan and India and the evolving international politics has always been a precarious one. But at the end of the day, the fact remains that Pakistan continues to still, even on this incident, act responsibly and does so with full accountability as well. Can we ever really expect the same from the Indian side?
Well, this is what I was highlighting earlier. I think this is the right time that India needs to be more responsible, because it's not a matter of going their own test wrong. It's about you are sending a missile to a nuclear state where you have very bad relations, you are having an ongoing conflict with them, and this is where you are sending. And after that, it's like, they were so quiet, as if Pakistan won't know about it. And once DGISPR, he sends a message over that this is what has happened, that's when they actually sat down the next morning and they started thinking about how to deal with it. And Modi even doesn't care about it. He doesn't want to be part of it because he knows that he will be in an embarrassing situation.
This is something we've talked about at length in our shows as well. Unfortunately, I'll have to cut you short over here. We have to go on to our next segment. We've been joined by our guest online, Mr. Khurshid Ahmed, who's the head of the Overseas Affairs PTI in USA. Thank you so much, Mr. Khurshid, for joining us. We, of course, know that there is a convention that is being planned and is going to be held on the 13th and 15th of March for overseas Pakistanis, and they're, of course, a big asset for the PTI government. Can you first of all help us understand what sort of a convention is this going to be, and what is it going to entail in terms of for the future of the overseas Pakistanis with regards to their role in Pakistan, and how do we plan to utilize them further?
Thank you so much for having me. We have in first overseas conference in Islamabad. It will be 13th to the 16th, and overseas from many countries, more than 20 countries, are coming to. Most of them is already in Islamabad, and some of them are on the way. They will be reaching today and tomorrow. And this is a first conference going to have it. It will be kind of networking. That will be a lot of the ministers, and also there is going to be a prime minister having a dinner with all the overseas. So the purpose of this conference is to interact with overseas, what overseas can do for the country, and what government of Pakistan can do for overseas. There are so many opportunities, and it's kind of
right. And that's an important aspect that you mentioned, because there's one thing that the overseas Pakistani is doing for Pakistan, but what really does the government also can do in terms of their reservations or any sort of grievances that they may have? Is there a redressal strategy that the government has to also facilitate overseas Pakistanis?
right. That's why the international chapter arranged Minister of Information, Minister of Science and Technology, Minister of Overseas. So all of the ministers are going to come and they're going to address and they're going to interact with overseas that what all if they have any problem, what their issues are, what their concerns are, how the government of Pakistan can address it, and what overseas Pakistanis are looking for to help in what regions and all that stuff. So this is going to be a very, very unique conference.
Right. So can you also tell us if the overseas Pakistanis are really excited to be part of this convention, because of course this is happening for the first time in the country?
Yes, you can see it. If you go outside, you're going to see the whole Islamabad with banners and flags. So if we're going to celebrate that, we're going to appreciate the government of Pakistan, we're going to appreciate the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan Sahib, that they gave us an opportunity to vote. This is a very, very big, we will be a stakeholder after that. And overseas also looking for to be a part of parliament. Overseas want to invest in Pakistan. Overseas want to come to Pakistan. Doctors, the engineers, the investors want to come to Pakistan and contribute in all this different fields.
And this, of course, is very important to us as well. Mr. Khurshid, in terms of the investment that you were earlier talking about, it's very, very important, of course, for Pakistan, and the overseas Pakistanis can play a major role with regards to that. What sort of facilitation are we really offering to overseas Pakistanis to help them in this process?
Can you repeat that, please? Hello?
Mr. Khurshid, in terms of the business-friendly policies, of course, as you mentioned, that the overseas Pakistanis are willing to invest and have also, of course, benefited the country economically in huge terms. What sort of facilitation is there for them?
Well, we want to do ease of business, like in other countries. If someone wants to start a business, there's the government facilitate an easy process to do it. That's why overseas Pakistanis want with the government of Pakistan, if they want to come to invest here, they have easy process and their investment will be secure. All these concerns they have it. That's why the Prime Minister of Pakistan always talk about
Mr. Khurshid, my last question to you is: Can you tell us some of the major things that overseas Pakistanis want from the country?
But overseas Pakistanis, first of all, they want to be a stakeholder. They want to be a part of the system. They want to be a part of the electoral system. They want to be part of the business. They want to part and all other things that the people living in Pakistan, they're doing it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khurshid Ahmed, for joining us and being a part of the debate today. We, of course, hope that this conference and this convention really helps the overseas Pakistanis interact with the government and the stakeholders within our country as well, and that, of course, this becomes the mutually beneficial relationship that it is, and that we continue to facilitate them. And, of course, we know that they're always willing and committed to the future and the progress of Pakistan. That's all we have from the debate for now. We're going to join you on Monday at 7:05 p.m. on PTV World. Don't forget to have a nice weekend and see you on Monday.